Well, hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Stu On This Podcast. And this is actually the first time out of 20 plus episodes that I've done of this podcast, plus the side 5-minute stews, that I have ever done a video version of the podcast. And I am excited to step out into this new adventure and bring on for the very first guest in that realm, my guest for you guys today, Christ Carstens. What's going on, man?
Hey, it's going well, buddy. How are you, sir?
Doing good. All right. So, Chris, I invited onto today's episode because, as many of you who listen know, I love talking with people who have some deep passions and just kind of finding the purpose behind it. And I believe that the passions that we have are God-given passions. And when we use them in the right way, it can actually point people back to Jesus. And so I brought Chris on to talk about streaking. Now,
Streaking,
might
baby.
be streaking. Now that Chris, that's a weird topic to kind of introduce as like the title, the theme for this episode, because everybody's going to be like, dude, Stu, you talk about Jesus and now we're talking about streaking. Well, there is streaking in the Bible, so I feel like it's a fair topic
Yeah,
to bring up. But Chris, you
yeah.
are wearing clothes, so I have a feeling that we're not talking about the actual
What
streaking that might be running through a lot of people's minds.
do I need to make a change? I can make a change? We got video here. We got video now.
Yeah, no, we're just gonna go ahead and leave it
All
as
right,
it is
okay,
and
all right,
fully clothed, if you don't mind.
all right. Sounds good.
Um, so, Chris, before we get into our topic of streaking and really kind of diving into what we're talking about when we say streaking, why don't you just kind of give us a little bit of an introduction of who you are and what you do, all that kind of good stuff.
All right. Well, as Stuart said, my name is Chris Carstens. I live here in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. I live with my daughter Haley. She is a 15-year-old. So there's all kinds of excitement that comes with any teenager of any kind. And being a dad to her, I'm sure there are plenty of times she would love to get rid of me, and there are plenty of times she's happy to have me around, just like any teenager.
Mm,
I am a special education teacher. I teach at Clinton Community School District, mainly eighth grade to sophomores is kind of the age range I work with, and I tend to help best in math. Math tends to be my area where um, I don't know. I've always liked math, so math works out for me. Don't ask me to write or spell, but I can do some math for you. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's more. I guess
yeah.
one big component. We probably won't talk about this a lot, but I do some work on the tech team in my church. I do some video directing, and I love doing that just about every single week. I get to do that, so I'm always blessed when I get to do that as well. So that's a big component of my life as well.
Yeah. Which you say that we probably won't dive into that too much, but
Yeah,
actually, as you and I were talking about you coming on to this, you did you actually talked about your
yeah.
streaking problem, if you will, because you have a streak of serving on Sundays doing the tech stuff. So I think, that's a great segue into our topic of
Yeah.
conversation today as we talk about streaking. And in particular, we're talking about the streaking that you have going on with you say it best. It's hashtag what?
Yeah. Run streak, baby.
Hashtag run streak
So
baby.
hashtag run streak baby, which is funny. I'm sure Stuart will, if he's not going to promote my stuff, I'll promote. I have a TikTok channel, and to be honest, the head tech guy at church kind of started doing it, and he got me into it a little bit. And I just did a video, and I just said "run streak baby" at the end of it, and then for the next like week or so, anytime I ran into people I knew, they all were repeating that to me. So that just became the catchphrase after 9 years of doing this. Apparently, I figured out a catchphrase for my run streak, which I'm sure we'll get more into here.
Yep. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So you just said it. You have a run streak of nearly 9 years, and you told me before we press that record button how many days you're
Yeah.
up to. So, how many days of running are you up to these days?
So I'm up to 3,529. So that's a little over 9.5 years. And
Dude,
officially, if you go into the official rules, and like the website is runeveryday.com, by the way, is like the
mm,
official association website where you register streaks. The official rule is you have to run a mile like within a 24-hour span of the day. It doesn't matter if it's on the treadmill or it's outside. It just has to be 1 mile. I have my own rules, which leads to lots of funny stories, as I'm sure we'll talk about. But that's kind of the base of how a run streak works. And technically, you're not on a run streak until you are at 1 year. So at
mm.
365 is when you can technically register to be on the run streak registry.
Okay, so how did you come across all of
So,
this? Like, how did you know about runeveryday.com and all that?
to be honest, I used to subscribe to Runner's World magazine like 15, 20 years ago, and there was an article in there about it. So I kind of read
Hmm.
a little it wasn't even a large one, just a little blurb about it. And so that's how I learned about it. Um, and I didn't go outside and start running every day after reading that article. That's another story I'm sure we'll talk about really soon. But that's how I became aware of it, was just Runner's World and a little article in there.
Okay, so running's been a big part of your life since how long?
Um, I I grew up in an interesting household where we weren't allowed to get out a lot, and I really begged my parents, and I was finally allowed to join the track team in 8th grade. Um, and so that's kind of when
Hmm.
I started running. I noticed, like growing up, I was picked on a lot. I'm a pretty skinny guy, so I'm not very strong, and like I said, household wasn't great, and I probably wasn't self-aware to know that my hair was messy or I had Oreo on my face or whatever. So
Hmm.
I was picked on quite a bit. But I noticed in gym class, I was pretty good at running. Like I was always in the top 5 or 10 in my class for like the mile run. So it just kind of dawned on me like, hey, maybe I should join track. Now, to be honest, I was not a very good runner. I was JV at best, and I didn't compete. I actually became a better jumper. Now, my brother, on the other hand, all American in college and all kinds of things. But for me, I just didn't have that mental toughness yet. That didn't come
Hmm.
until I was a senior, and by that time I already switched to jumping, and I was more of a jumper at the time.
Okay, so then where I mean, you're doing high school, you get into jumping.
Yeah.
So where did the love for running come from, and like what led to that becoming a streak, like a habit that you do every single day?
All right. Well, as I got out of high school, I needed a year to work to earn money. And to be honest, I didn't even know I was going to go to college. I just knew I needed to work. And since I'm not in school anymore, there's no more working out like on the school. Like when you're in school, you get kind of lucky. Like your workouts are scheduled for you. Like, hey, you finish eighth
Mm,
hour, you go to the track for 2 hours, you do what somebody else tells you to do, and you go home. So I started running around my neighborhood and things, and my brother, like I said, he was a talented runner, and I started coaching track as well. So then I was running to keep in shape so I could literally show kids how to jump and things, because when you sit around and eat Oreos and ice cream every day, like, you suddenly can't jump like you used to. So it was really just a way to stay in shape. And I ended up coaching track and then cross country as I got hired as a teacher out of college. So a lot of times running was just a way to stay in shape, especially for cross country, because you got to be able to run with the kids or you got to get on the bike. And I really didn't want to get on the bike. I wanted to say like, hey,
mm,
I'm not going to ask you to do anything I'm not willing to do, so suck it up,
mm.
kind of thing. So, so that's why I started running. And I wouldn't do like every day, but definitely like the summer leading up to cross country season, and then like spring leading up to track, I would start running again. But then winter, I would take off because it's cold
Mm.
outside, man. Who's running in the cold? Me, but we'll talk about that.
Nah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Um, and then one year, as silly as it is, I sat on my couch one day and I felt a twinge in my lung area, and I didn't think any better. And my wife at the time and we went for a run, and my whole side of my body was like on fire. Like, and we only ran
Hmm.
like a mile and a half. It was just, I can't even describe the feeling except that that half of my body was on fire. And I eventually ended up going to urgent care. And I just said, hey, I'm kind of having a little bit of problem breathing. Like I just seemed labored. And it was funny because they told me it was like a 4 hour wait. And then I said, well, I'm just going home. And they said, well, what are your symptoms? And when I said, all of a sudden it was like red alert and there was a wheelchair and they wheeled me to the back. And a couple hours later, I learned I had a collapsed lung. Um,
Wow.
it's called a spontaneous pneumothorax. Um, Apparently, males who are tall and skinny are actually very susceptible to this. And that basically
Hmm.
just means the lung detaches from the wall and like it doesn't stay inflated. So, they stuck a hose in there and inflated it back up. And then throughout a week of staying in the hospital, the wall reattached itself. So that was great. But after that, I wasn't able to do anything. Like I couldn't walk fast. I wasn't allowed to pick up more than 5 pounds. I had to be careful if
Wow.
I stood up fast because I could rip my lung off the wall. Because what they said, you really have to be careful because when you have this, you're 50% more likely to have it again. And every time it happens, you're 50% more
Wow.
likely for it to happen again. So it gets
Wow.
exponentially bad pretty quick. So I took the time. So that would have been about spring break. So we're talking late March that year. And then around June, I started like walking fast and for duration. And then eventually I was able to run again. So I ran a couple days. And then I didn't know this at the time, but I went for a run on July 1st and I ran. And actually, in preparation for this, I kind of read through my Facebook posts about my run stories because
Hmm.
I tried to catalog all them last year. And so on the second day, I posted, I ran for 2 days in a row. This is super exciting. Um, and then
Hmm.
I know I realized at some point, like, wow, I ran every day this week. I didn't even mean to do that, but I wonder if I could do that for 2 weeks. Like, and then I
Hmm.
did that for 2 weeks, and I was like, oh, maybe I could do a month. Wouldn't it be pretty cool to like run a whole month with no days off, just to say I did, I did that, and I did that for a month. And I'm a teacher, so it was like, well, 2 more weeks till school starts. I'll just carry this on for 2 more weeks, and then school's gonna hit, and this will be over because I'm busy after that. And I ran the 2 weeks and then school hit and I was still able to run. And I'm like, well, this seems to be working out my schedule, but winter's coming. I'll stop when it gets cold. Like nobody runs when it's cold. Um, and I know your people listening don't know this. I hate treadmills. I don't like treadmills. So if I'm running outside. I'm not blessed enough to
Hmm.
have a huge 400-meter track in my house. So I'm going outside. And then went, and then winter came, and I was able to get through that. I don't know if it was just a warmer winter in general, but it really wasn't much of an
Hmm.
issue. And then, kind of towards the end of winter, it was like I made it through winter running every day. Like, I wonder if I could do this for a whole year. and
Hmm.
then and that it was kind of it from there. And then it was just self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, now you've put in all this work, why would you stop unless you have to?
Hmm.
And there's plenty of stories and funny things along the way. But that's really how the run streak started, just with a collapsed lung. So something I took for granted that, oh, I'll just be able to do this and get up to speed and be able to keep up with, 50% of the kids on the cross country team, no problem, to, well, now you can't do anything. So I don't
Wow.
know if you've ever had that situation in your life or your listeners, but when you're told you can't do something that maybe you took for granted, you suddenly want to do that thing a lot more. And I think that was
Hmm.
pretty true for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, what a crazy story. Like, so even still to this day, you still have the potential for your lung to detach and collapse, right?
Yeah, I think just because I'm a tall, skinny guy, for your listeners, I'm about 150 pounds and 6 foot tall, just for some reference. So it could
Yeah.
happen at any time. Actually, when it happened to me, I had a coworker and her son was 17-ish, and he had already had like 8 or 9, and he wasn't even like an athletic guy. He was just tall and
Mm.
skinny, and because it had happened a few times, now it's so fragile, um, that he's had surgeries to like sew his lung back to the wall, kind of thing, to even if it were to semi collapse, to kind of keep it up. So all that was pretty
Yeah.
in my brain was pretty scary at the time. I'm like, this kid's like 17 and he's doing that, and I'm like, 30 in my 30s.
Yeah.
I would like to, I would like to have my lung for a long time. So I don't know. In some
Yeah.
ways,
Yeah,
maybe
for
I'm
sure.
I'm risking it, but I also think I'm probably really strengthening them all the time as well. So it's probably a double-edged sword in some
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, for sure. What's amazing is I actually know a guy who he has one lung, and this guy outbreathes me. So I did music for a while. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but I did music, and I actually went to school originally for music education. So being a band nerd, uh, I don't know. Well, because your daughter, she's in band. You guys might know
Yeah.
this now. Do you guys know about Drum Corps International?
I'm aware of the name. I couldn't speak specifically to details, but I've definitely heard of it before.
Perfect. Yeah. So in Drum Corps International, they bring in all these instructors to all these different corps to help teach percussion, brass, all that kind of stuff, right? And at the time when I was trying out for one up in Denver, there was a guy who he was a tuba player, and he had one lung. And there's all these breathing exercises, and I got blown away because this guy with the one lung was out breathing me. Like I was trying to keep up with him on some of these exercises, and I was seeing stars, and he's just still going, still steady airstream coming from his mouth. I'm like, you got one lung, dude. Like, what in the world? Um, so it's amazing what our body can do, but hearing that from you and how much you're running,
Huh.
knowing how much you run, it just baffles my mind. So, okay, let's get back to running though. So, how many miles a day do you run?
I average about 4 miles a day. My standard route right now is 4.3. Um, I mean, it's a GPS watch, so it's not super. Sometimes it's 4.4 or 4.3, but it's right in that range. And unfortunately, I've slowed down. I've had this like leg thing happening that only happens when I run since like last,
Hmm.
I don't know, August, July. It's been really irritating. So not that like speed is the thing, but so I'm covering that distance in maybe 32 minutes, so like 7:15 to 7:30 miles roughly on average is kind of the pace I'm going
Yeah.
outside at least each day. And obviously there's longer days, but there has to be a reason to go shorter usually, to like change the route.
Hmm.
Like maybe some kind of super crazy weather, or maybe I'm just out of time that day, or whatever the case may be, but usually 4 miles is kind of the standard.
Yeah, and in order to keep that streak alive, it has to be a mile.
It has to be a mile. My personal rule, kind of, once I had a streak, I define my streak, and luckily I can change this to 1 mile, like when I get older or really injured or something. But it was 20 minutes or 2.5 miles. So like there were times
Okay.
when I had like kidney stones and the flu and things, so I was going for the 20 minutes. Like get me to 20 minutes and I'm going back in the door, kind of thing. So
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great transition point. So there are real life things that get in the way, real life hurdles. So kidney stones, the flu, I mean, coronavirus that we've been dealing with for the past couple of years. And like you said, we live in Wisconsin. So Melissa and I are moving from Colorado. If it snows one day, like if it snows in the morning, it's melted away by like noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so when we moved out here last year in October, we had the first snow back in 2021. Um, the pastor at our church, he was just like, "Oh, I mean, you guys are used to snow, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm used to it being gone. Like, it's the middle of February, and that's still the snow from October. What is happening out here?" So
I didn't know in
all these things.
Denver, or I didn't know in Colorado it doesn't. I didn't know it disappeared. I just assumed you guys got buried, just like us.
No, it no, it melts away. So the fact that it stays frozen and white up here, dude, I tell you, it threw us off. Um, but so all that to say, like, there's all these different hurdles that come across us in life, and despite the hurdles that you face, you're near 10 years into keeping this streak alive. And I even love the way that you said it. You're like, it started with, wow, I did 2 days in a row. I didn't realize it too. I did a week in a row. Like, I wonder if I can do a month, if I can do it, I'll do it
Yeah,
till the school year starts. And even there, like, work gets in the way, right? Like, can I keep this
yeah.
going even, when work is eating up my life, but yet you figured out how to do it. So despite the hurdles that come across in life, like, what advice, I guess, what was your mentality first of all, and what advice would you give to somebody to look past what seem to be mountains and see them more as speed bumps that are easily conquerable, to keep
Yeah.
a routine, a habit, a rhythm, a streak alive? How did you do it, and what's the advice?
Have you ever heard the term gamification?
No.
Okay. Well, as a teacher, that was a term that came up without through my years here as the internet has come and more multiplayer games, like giving kids like educational opportunities through like games.
Hmm.
So that was called like gamification of education for just kind of a base term. So I kind of look at that as how I've approached. It's like a game to me in some ways because so many people just think I'm crazy. Like they just think I'm crazy. Period. Like that's just it, which is
I
totally
can't.
fine, and I'm sure we'll tell some fun stories about that.
Yeah, I can't see the reason why people would think you're crazy. 10
Yeah,
years
I
of
don't know
running.
why either, but hey, like I gotta own it. Um, so it really just kind of, at first, it was like I really had to think about it. Like, oh man, okay, what's going on tomorrow? All right,
Hmm.
well, Haley has this going on, so I'm gonna have to wake up early, or I'm gonna have to run at like 9:30 at night after my wife at the time gets home, or whatever. So it was, I don't want to say a hassle at the time, but it was like I was really trying to figure out. Now I look at it more, almost, it's almost like a game to me. Like, okay, so tomorrow Haley has practice, and then she has piano, and then I got church rehearsal. So I got to be up at 5 a.m. to run tomorrow. So like that's how I'm going to beat the system. I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. instead of 6, and I'm going to run. And no one else is up doing that, so I'm just going to be, being an idiot all by myself, and I win, and I win. Like anytime I run, it's a win because the
Yeah.
streak continues.
Yeah.
So even um, like the polar vortex came through whatever 3 years ago, something like that, and so we were hitting -50 wind chills, and there was like 3 days in a row where there was no school, businesses were closed, and everything, and it was just like, how am I going to run for at least 20 minutes when they say
Mm.
you can't even be outside for more than 10 without like serious repercussions? And it's like, oh, well, I'm going to have 8 layers on every part of my body, and I'm not even going to wear my glass. I learned when I stepped outside, my glasses fogged up instantly, so I couldn't even wear my glasses.
Hmm.
And I ran around for 20 minutes, and there was no. I remember one of those days because there was a cop driving around, and he passed me 3 times on my run. I honestly believe he wanted to make sure I was not going to die or something.
Yeah.
Um, but that was just like, it was a win. And then once you do that, then you have this crazy story that like brings smiles to it. Like they think you're crazy and all those things, but at the same time, they're smiling when you talk to
Mm.
them about it. They're not like, all right, Chris, I'm worried about you. Like, can we like see a counselor? No, it's like, wait, you mean you were outside in that? Like, how? I don't even understand. Why? I don't know. And then you tell them, and they're like, all right, well, I wouldn't do that, but I guess you're standing here talking to me now, so it's not so bad. Um, so I really like, just at this point, it's really just a game for me in many
Mm.
ways, and like my TikToks, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about those in a little bit. like I just want to tell the fun stories of running. Like, because I think so many people hate running so much, and when you run every day, you just run into stuff that people don't run into in their everyday lives for some reason. So just telling the fun story of like, hey, today I was running and there was this grandma on her bicycle with an umbrella over her head because it was raining, and she had a huge bag on the other side of her bicycle, and she was struggling to stay straight, and she was coming right towards me and she was not moving. So I needed to figure out a way to get around this lady while I was running today. And people were like, what? There was a lady with an umbrella on a bicycle with a big bag in her other hand? And like, yeah, this is what I saw. you know?
Yeah, you're like, this is life, people. Get outside, run a little bit. You'll experience it.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're outside
I,
every single day, you see some things.
yeah, I told a mutual friend of ours one time that you did one of your TikToks, and you're telling a story about this kid that was sitting in a snowbank with his Nerf gun, and he came around a corner,
Oh yeah.
and he just shot you, right? Is that what it was?
Oh
He
yeah.
just shot you?
He totally eyed me up and every time, and I was doing laps. Like my winter, I try to stay closer to the house just in case. So I was
Yeah.
actually doing laps in the subdivision. So he saw me multiple times, and it was literally just like he used it like a bunker, and he just eyed me up, and I just become part of the kid's game. Like, hey man, there's the enemy, and I'm going to take him out.
I told our friend that I was going to do a Stitch TikTok video of me being the kid in the bunker, getting ready to shoot you as you're telling the story. I never got around to it, but yeah,
Oh
that's fine.
yeah, that would have been pretty solid. That would have been pretty
I didn't.
good.
So gamification. So
Yeah.
I'm taking that as the how. You gave me the why,
Yeah.
and I'm taking that as the how for anybody else because so the YouVersion Bible app is a great example of this to me of what you're talking about. So if I were to open up my phone right now, and this is like not to brag or anything, right? But it's talking about like in lines of the streak, conversation that we're having. I have a
Yeah.
streak of 1,157 days in the YouVersion Bible app.
Nice.
Now, right, I love this streak.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, like that has turned into the gamification for me. Like I
Yep.
love opening up my Bible and I love spending time with God, but because of the way that YouVersion has designed their app with the streak right there at the very top, it has turned into I have to keep this streak alive, which the beauty of that means I then have to spend time in God's word. But it became a game in order to keep it going. Um, and so I'm actually in the process right now of trying to figure out, man, is there an app? There has to be an app, right? There's an app for everything. But I'm trying to figure out, is there an app out there where you can create your own streak calendar? Because if that YouVersion streak goes back down to 1, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to flip my lid. And there's been times that I've opened up the app and it's not working properly. And I'm like, oh, you dirty dogs, don't you mess up my streak because your technology is not working right now. Um, but I'm trying to figure out if there's an app out there where I can create my own streak calendar in order to focus in on like clean eating, water intake. That I do
Yeah.
CrossFit, and that's why I think it's ridiculous your stories of running in negative 50-degree temperature, because I walked from the parking garage at the airport in Milwaukee into the building and it was like negative 20, negative 30, and my hands were done just walking from the garage to the airport building. And I would never ever do something like that ever again. And you're running negative 50. But we we put in a rig for CrossFit movements and all that in our garage, but our garage has like no heating. I know, first world problems.
Yeah.
Fight me.
Yeah.
Um, but I love it because there's been conversations that I've had with people at the church, and they're like, "Hey, so how's the workout equipment working out for you?" And I'm like, "Dude, it's great." They're like, "Does it work well?" I'm like, "It works great. Not when it's like negative 30 outside and my garage is like -10. It's really cold. So I've seen the pictures of you, and again, even in your TikTok, just running out in the cold. I'm working out in the cold garage, and like everything on the mustache and the beard is just like completely crystallized over. I'm like, this is dumb. This is who does this? But again, the gamification for it, dude, I love that terminology. I'm gonna have to look into this more. But like I've been working out in that garage now, and there's been days where I look at it and it's like, dude, this is way too cold. But I'll get it done. And every single time that I do it more and more, I sit there at like 2 weeks later, if it's about that temperature again, I'm like, "Oh, I've done it once before. I might as well do it again. You know,
Yeah.
layering up. I'm looking like the little boy from the Christmas story, all wrapped up. Like, I want to lift things up and put them down now. But yeah, gamification. All that to say, gamification. I took that away. So let's talk about your TikTok. We'll transition to TikTok and we'll close this
All
thing
right.
down. So your handle, your TikTok handle is what?
Skinny running guy. So
Yeah, so
at
you've just
skinny running
fully
guy.
embraced this. You've fully
Yeah,
embraced this.
to be honest, where it comes from, at least I feel that's a story worth telling, is because I am a skinny male who likes to run, and I find it most comfortable to run in running shorts, not basketball shorts. And I find it more comfortable to run without a shirt if I don't have to, if it's over 60 degrees. Um, I just I was getting made fun of by people all the time. And I don't mean like, hey buddy, like my best friend giving me a hard time about, no, like I mean people in cars literally harassing me
Mm,
about how I look or whatever. I especially think a lot of guys, and I'm going to just say guys here, but guys will think maybe I'm a girl on a run. So they're looking to
mm.
check me out. And then when I'm not a girl, they're mad. Um, I don't know how to
You
say
don't
that
say.
in a different way. Um, I literally had somebody post on my Facebook page, a person I used to work with who I considered a friend. I mean, he literally said he was like going to call the cops on me for indecent exposure because I run past his house. And he literally was posting about how like my genitals are hanging out of my shorts and all kinds of things, and they're not true, but just this is how
Mm,
people like viewed me.
mm.
And as I ran more and more, like I would run into people who would go like, "I know you, I know you. You're that guy. You're the guy who runs. Like you run around
Mm.
Elkhorn all the time. You're always running in Elkhorn, right?" Like, and that was just happening more and more. Um, so I just kind of as a kid who was bullied a lot, and I became a special ed teacher. That just kind of became part of who I am. Like I just need to embrace my quirks, and you got to be comfortable in your own skin and happy with who you are. And so I really just embraced that. I hit 3,000 days, obviously like 500 some 600 whatever it was days ago, and a guy in town he printed up some shirts, and he's a wrestling coach at the high school, and he's been doing it for years. So he actually followed me on a bike that day with his cell phone and recorded some video, and that video had like over 2,000 views on Facebook in a couple days, which, yeah, not viral, but a lot of local people were replying like, I know that guy, that's the crazy running guy.
Mm.
And I learned all these things people were calling me. And so I just embraced, well, if this is what everybody's calling me, I'll just become skinny running guy and I'll just own it. So so
Yeah.
that's where that came from, at least the name.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now you've taken your run streak, which I have to imagine I haven't. So I got off of TikTok um, a while ago because to me, it was sucking my soul. Um, there was no gamification in that one.
Yeah.
There was no winning in that one, in my opinion. But I would imagine so. If your streak for running is as high as it is, then I'm guessing that your TikTok streak is starting to build up.
Yeah, I'm not like going viral or anything. I have around 400 followers or anything, so I'm not super deep. But I
Yeah.
I really find that I approach like the TikTok running thing very different than the rest of the TikTok running community. Um,
Mm,
the average like, and I'm not making fun, but the average TikTok video is you get a blip, like 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles. Hey, I'm all done. Here's how fast I ran. Here's my time.
Yeah.
Or the guy with the selfie stick, which shows crazy awesome video of himself running, but why are you running with your phone and a selfie stick? Like, I go on a run to run. I don't go on a run
Mm.
to take video of myself, you know? So that's kind of what the typical running TikTok is. And I just know so many people don't like people who like running. But I just like I want to tell the fun like I was saying earlier. I want to tell the fun stories, like the things that happen to me, the odd things, and let's say 50% of them are my fault because I'm just out all the time or not noticing something going on around me or whatever. But I want to tell like the fun side of it, or at least I think I'm trying to tell the fun side of it. Or if something's really hard, like showing it's hard or making fun of myself. If like the whole point is, at least for me, if somebody sees a video of mine and smiles, like that's a win. Like we were talking
Mm.
about gamification, like it. Even if you're shaking your head at me as you swipe it past, like that was a win because like you're like, what is happening here? Um,
Hmm.
so for me, that's how I approach it. At least whether that's successful or not, I don't know. I think half the time
Yeah.
I have fun making the video. So for me, that again another win. I had fun making the video. So
Yeah. No, the thing that I love about everything that you're sharing is like everybody's focusing on something at all times, right? Like everybody's either saying, I need to get better at reading on a consistent basis. I need to work out on a regular basis. I need to eat better. I need to dive into God's word on a daily basis. Like you name it, you fill that blank in with anything. Everybody's got that thing that they're trying to fill the blank in with. Um, and to me, what I love about your streak and who you are is I think that running might be one of the hardest things to choose to do and be consistent with it. Like there's almost no point to it. Um, like really,
yeah,
okay, I'm just going.
yeah,
I mean, I'm just gonna go out and
yeah,
run. Nobody's chasing me with a knife. I don't have, Mike Myers behind me chasing me down or anything like that. But like, I'm just gonna go out. I'm just gonna go run. But the beauty that I love of what you experience and what you're doing is not only are you facing challenges and pushing through them, again, health, natural weather, all that kind of stuff. You're facing these things, you're pushing through them, so you're controlling the things that you can control.
yeah,
That's huge. Like people will stop something and complain about something that they have no control over, and they act like it's the end of the world, and yet you have this mentality, and again, it might just be compartmentalized and just running, but in that area of run, you're like, okay, how do I win? I can't control that, so how do I win even against something that I can't control? Um, like I just love that mentality, and there's just so much about this, and the fact that you're experiencing life that a lot of people aren't. Um, we bought our house out here, and I used to talk about how like we as Americans, we live in this culture now where we don't know our neighbors anymore. We leave for work in the morning out of our garage, get to the office, and we come back at the end of the day into our garage closed, and that's it. We're shut up in our house. Um, and so we just don't know neighbors, we don't know people, we don't do life really with people anymore. And you're experiencing stuff that most people will never see, and it's an everyday thing because you're out in the world and experiencing it. So I just love like what your streak has led to for you, and I love what it has maybe unintentionally taught you overall.
yeah,
Um, and I just love the way that God is using your story being platformed like this for other people to hear and be like, dude, this is cool. Like if this guy can run for 10 years straight and keep going, I can pick up something and get going on it too, no matter what life has to throw at me. So I say kudos to you, Chris, for for doing it, keeping it going, and encouraging people on the process, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm not like in terms of run streaks, I am not a superstar by any means. I met Steve DeBoer. I might be murdering his name. He just hit 50 years straight over
Wow.
maybe about a year ago now. So I'm technically in terms of registered streaks, I'm like 433 on the list. So I'm not by all means like, hey, I'm the greatest ever. There are a lot of people who have been doing this for longer than I've been alive. So I got to keep that in mind. But yeah, I will say the whole not knowing. I remember when I first built this house and not knowing my neighbors, that was so weird to me because as a kid, I knew everybody in the subdivision. They all knew me. Um, but now, like, come Halloween, everybody knows me, which is weird. You're like, that's the running guy. That's the running guy. They'll literally tell their kids, that's the guy. you know?
It's the short shorts. It's the
Yeah,
short shorts.
it
When
is
you
the
wear
short
short
shorts.
shorts out for trick or treating, everybody knows.
Yeah. But at the same time,
Yeah.
it also opens communication. Like, because now they know you for something. So, and
Yeah.
like, I'm so blessed in so many ways, despite my ability to complain about them. But like, well, people tell me like I'm a motivation to them, or like, hey, I knew you were running today, so I knew I had to do this today, even though I didn't want to.
Mm.
Like those kinds of conversations, and it's not even necessarily physical stuff. Sometimes it's just like I needed to practice my music or whatever the case may be. So just being able to have that effect on people just incidentally, or people I know or whatever, is pretty rewarding, because that's definitely not why I started or anything of that. Like, it's all about me, to be honest. I want to do this, so I'm doing this. Had nothing to do with, well, I wanted to be known for doing this. But when people say things, because you think about like your own heroes, or like, hey, you really motivate me. So when somebody's saying that to you, it's just so humbling, and you've just got to, God has blessed you with that, and you really just got to take that in and make sure you're doing positive things with that. Not that I would have negative, but like, the whole, if you are on the internet and one person has liked your thing or followed you, you are an influencer. So how are you using that influence? And I try to use mine as positively as I can in general.
That's sweet. That's good stuff, bro. I think that's where we'll end it. So, Mr. Chris, skinny running guy, run streak baby, Carstens, thanks, man, for coming on to the podcast and just sharing your passion with these listeners. And if anybody wants to follow you, get in touch with you, how can they best do that?
TikTok at skinnyrunningguy.com. There's a website where I keep all my data. You mentioned earlier about losing your data. I have switched platforms, and I've been so nervous about losing data, so I totally understand that. But if you go to smashrun.com/Chris.Carstens, I believe that's where all my stats are. So you can see it all there. Yeah, it is Chris.Carstens. I just checked. So smashrun.com/Chris.Carstens, and you can see all my running stats, and you could literally check every day. It's always updated. My Garmin automatically syncs to that site. So, or, those probably the easiest way, because you could DM me on TikTok if you were really looking to hook up with me in some way or learn some information.
Sweet. All right. So smashrun.com, Chris.Carstens, in order to hold the skinny running guy accountable to making sure that he keeps the streak alive. That's where you can go and watch to make sure. And if it's coming to the end of the day, there's 20 minutes left in the day. It's 11:39 p.m. Reach out to this guy and say, you need to throw those running shoes on now and get going. So, Chris, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, bud. I appreciate it, man.